Does anybody want to get a fresh cup of tea or anything before we start? No, no worries. Oh, sorry, this is just my cheat sheet.
Yes.
I have a terrible memory.
Please do. I need one.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming as well. We really appreciate it. We love getting authors in.
Yeah.
So if anybody's not familiar, this is Jane McParkes. And this is your debut novel.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about how you would classify the novel? How do you describe it to people who've not read it before?
It seems people like to be able to pigeonhole what you write. They like you to have a genre because obviously booksellers like to be able to put it in a certain place.
You like stickers on the side.
Yeah, and so you go in that section or that section. So the most obvious one it fits into is cosy crime, which is a relatively new genre. It only really kind of became a popular thing at the end of, when I say the last century, I always think of the 1800s. I mean, like 1990s.
Yeah.
And it became more of a recognised genre because it was moving away from the blood and the gore and the thrillers and the hard-boiled, gritty stuff. And so it kind of fits into the cosy genre in the fact that it's got an amateur sleuth, she's professional female, small town setting.
Nothing too dark and grim.
It's pure escapist fiction.
It's the most popular genre we do.
But within the realms of, but you know that justice is going to prevail. The baddies will get their comeuppance somehow, and that everybody can live happily. Once they've gone through everything they've had to go through in the book. But I've added that extra twist of putting eco themes into it because I've always liked cozy stuff, and so the crime and the investigation are like the bones and the meat of the book, but I've seasoned it with eco themes. So it's set in an eco-friendly place and they do eco-friendly things, and it's showcasing what a positive, sustainable society could look like, but just treating it as normal. They don't bash you over the head with green stuff. It's just sprinkled in.
I saw online that you described it as green fiction, and it's like a little movement.
Hopefully, it's getting there. It's called positive green fiction, and it's sort of not, because they've proved that dystopian fiction doesn't work because people get really miserable and depressed, and if you're kind of told the end is nigh, everybody shuts down. Utopia is just like, oh god, that's never going to happen. And so this is like the medium ground, so you're positive, showcasing these positive solutions and how it could be,
right, rather than scaring everybody with a post-apocalyptic
and hoping that people will be so invested in it. And it has worked. I've had a few people contact me and said, really looked at the way I do things and I'm changing them. And that's what it's all about, just seasoning it and seeing how that cooks.
Nice. That's a great idea. And your main character is an eco-architect.
She's an eco-architect.
So it's brilliant to sort of be in her head.
Yes, so she's lived in New York. She obviously trained in England, but she lived in New York. And at the beginning of the novel, she was living in New York. And her job was to design and oversee the conversion of all the warehouses in Manhattan, and how that used to be actually industrial buildings. And they've all been slowly retrofitted to make them eco-friendly, and they're turned into accommodation, office blocks and everything. And that's all about using existing buildings and industrial buildings that no longer have their original use, but giving them a new use for modern times.
I never thought of that as an eco thing. I didn't realise. That's brilliant.
Well, if you think about it, knocking down a building is the worst thing you can do. The greenest building is the one that still exists. And if you think about all the carbon that's created by building a new building, even if it's eco, it'll never last long enough to mitigate all the carbon that you've done. So, I mean, that's a bit technical. I don't really go into that in the book, but there is a bit in it when, so it's all about how reusing buildings is much more eco-friendly than knocking them down and building horrible new ones.
That's a contentious point with this library.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? And do what?
Moved into the town hall, but it's going to be smaller.
Yeah, very big political kerfuffle about it here. But anyway.
Well, I live in Birmingham, so our council's gone bust, and they're not spending any money on anything at the moment.
Right. I don't think ours are much more sold.
So, you know, libraries suffer.
So did you start off with the idea of making it have this sort of eco-friendly theme, or did that come later?
That came later.
So it started as a mystery, and then
started as a mystery. I've always written stories. I've always loved reading. And from a little child, you know, my mum taught me to read before I went to school. And somebody once said that writing and reading are like inextricably linked, and that reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out.
Right, yeah. I've read Stephen King says that all the time.
I've not read his book, but I read that. I don't know where
it's great. His on writing.
On writing, yeah.
He says the only way to do it is to read a lot and write a lot.
Yeah, and then you have a go, don't you? So I think when I first started off writing, I was just writing for the sake of writing, adventures and things like that. Because this is when I was like 10 or 11.
Right.
Because when I was 8, I had my first publishing success, writing a letter to do you remember the Bunty comic?
Oh, yeah.
And I wrote a letter when I was 8 saying, and it was a true story, that my granddad had dug up he'd been gardening, and he dug up a very small handgun.
Oh, okay.
And then about 2 foot away from it, he dug up a pair of gold hoop earrings. So I wrote this thing all about how it was probably all connected with an unsolved murder mystery and stuff. And I got it published in the Bunty magazine.
Nice. Well, very well done.
It then took me till I was 56 to get a publishing contract. But I was working on stories all that time.
So have you always wanted to be a writer?
I've always. Yeah, I think I have. I've always wanted. Yes, I have.
Did you sort of put it on the back burner for a while? And
well, the thing is, I was at school in the 70s, and it wasn't a job in those days. You know, I was taught by nuns. You know, girls didn't get a job as writers. You know, and we were always
conservative.
You know, we were really steered towards academic subjects, because you had to do academic subjects to get to university, to get a proper job. And so, although I always wanted to write, I knew that in those days it wasn't encouraged really. So I wrote in secret for years and years and years. And I was just saying, and when I was probably from when I was about 12, and I had books and exercise books full of stories. And then when I was about 20, I was going to Valencia for a week to see a friend who was doing his gap year or his year abroad in Valencia. And there'd been a terrorist threat at Heathrow Airport. So I decided I was going to die.
Right.
And so I burnt all my books that I'd written, all my exercise books. So I obviously didn't die.
Because of the terrorist threat, you were just like...
I just thought, I don't want anyone to find them.
Right.
And I'll see what I've been doing. I'm sure they probably knew what I was doing. I don't know, you know, but I always scribbled in secret.
Were you writing sort of weird stuff, or was it just the idea that people would find out that you were a writer?
Oh, no, it wasn't weird.
I write horror stuff. So
God, no. It was adventure.
Feeling of like, oh God, if my wife sees this.
No, it was adventure stuff, because what really got me into reading was Enid Blyton. And my favourite ever book, although this isn't my original copy, my daughter bought me a load of these, was The Famous Five. And so I started off liking writing adventure stuff, but I wasn't very good at the craft of writing. So I was very good at writing the beginning and the middle, but I never kind of finished anything because I didn't know how to.
Right. Yeah.
So although it wasn't really crime. No, it wouldn't have been crime in those days. It was just like adventure stuff and everyday stuff, always set in the countryside. I think because I lived in a city, I just wanted to escape to the countryside in my head.
Yeah. I go the other way because I grew up in a tiny village, essentially. everything I write is like massive cities. And,
really?
Yeah.
I suppose it's what your escapist stuff, isn't it? And you think, well, I want to write something different from what I'm living.
Yeah. So your setting here is a fictional village.
Yeah.
What made you want to make it fictional?
What made me want to make it fictional was if I set it in a place that everybody knew well. Have you heard of Rachel McLean, this crime writer?
Yeah.
Well, she says that she just gets loads of letters saying it'd take you longer to get from Poole to Weymouth. And you don't turn right at that roundabout. You have to turn left and then go straight on.
Yeah.
And I just thought I didn't want to sort of like invite loads of comments like that, and also I didn't want to offend anybody in case they thought I was going to. I mean, not, you know, I suppose people don't like to think there's murders going on where they live, do they? But you know, don't suppose they mind in Midsummer, wherever it is. But I just wanted to make it fictional, and then you can move things around.
Yeah.
So if somewhere isn't where you want it to be, and you think, well, I couldn't get there, you can in fiction, because it's very great. So like my second book is set further up the coast from Falmouth. But I wanted this Georgian house, which is not on the coast, but I've moved it to the coast. It's great.
Why not?
You can do what you like.
Yeah.
And no one can say, well, it isn't on the coast. You think, well, it is in my book because it doesn't exist.
We had that issue. Natalie Marlowe came in and she'd written a book about Birmingham in the 30s. And my wife's from Birmingham.
Yeah.
And the character wants to go to a particular place and just leaves his office, which is on a certain street, and it's all clearly mapped out. And my wife's reading it, being like, "Why is he going that way?"
Well, have you heard of there's a female forensic psychologist, and I think she writes under the name AJ Cross.
Oh, right.
And she writes books set in Harborne in Birmingham, and I live there. And I do that. When I'm reading it, I find it really distracting because I'm thinking, oh, where's that? Oh, why is she going that way? So I thought I just want to try and move away from that. So I've got a very firm idea of the place in my head.
Yeah.
But it's, you know.
And you can have anything you like happen. You can say that, you know, the local newspaper's corrupt. Or
yes.
you know,
and the village post ladies and busybody, but you don't mind.
So at what point did you decide to introduce the eco theme? Is that something that you've always been passionate about, or is that?
I've always been quite environmentally friendly, and my husband is, and as a family we are. And I'd written the book originally, and then it got a few eco bits in it, and then I sent it off to agents. This is before COVID, when you had to go through agents, and they all came back and said very nice things, but no, it didn't really fit into anything.
Yeah.
And so what happened, so they came back to me, and then just before COVID, I was diagnosed with a very rare but treatable cancer, and I thought, oh, I've got to get this book finished.
Yeah.
I want to get it. I thought, well, what will I regret in my life that I haven't done? If I get to be old and grey, what will my biggest regret be? And personally, I decided for me that it would be not trying to get my book out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of rewrote it and put more of the eco seasoning in it.
Yeah.
So although it was always there in the background, I just put a bit more in.
Just made it more of a feature.
Yeah. But it's still, you can still read it as not get any of the messages. You know, it's not really sort of like thumping you over the head, but it's what I wanted to work on. It was what was making me feel better through COVID, was trying to envisage this different way of doing things, and gave me sort of like hope for the future.
Yeah, it's a nice way of doing it as well, because as you say, it's not preachy. It doesn't make you feel terrible if you mess up your recycling occasionally. No,
I mean, everyone makes mistakes. It's just one little, if you do one little thing towards it, that's all that matters. If everybody does one little thing, it's great. Yeah,
and I love that you can read it and learn a little bit about these projects, and you come away having had a glimpse into somebody's skill set, which is nice. Yeah, I mean, because you're primarily writing to entertain. Yeah. That's your job as a writer, is to entertain. But if you can actually inform
a little bit as well. I think that's a added bonus.
Definitely. And the setting as well is like going on a little holiday. I love the way you describe it. It's very it's like you can sort of feel it.
Yeah, and I set it in it's set in disused Great Western Railway station site, which is hopefully well researched, because I'm married to the biggest train geek in the world who loves steam trains, and so his day job is now a judge. He was a criminal barrister, but his weekend job is a signalman on the Severn Valley Railway. So for like the last 30 years, I have been dragged round steam railways, and he looks at the engines and I look at the buildings. And I thought, when I was going to write it, I thought, I'm going to set it in a railway station, and then I can ask him more intelligent questions and actually listen to his answers, because normally I don't listen to him, and then I can use that in my books as well.
Was he delighted to be
he hasn't read it.
Honestly.
Yeah, he was pleased, and I asked him lots of questions to say, can we go and look at so and so, and how does this work, and how does a weighbridge hook work, and how does that work, and then he'll tell me, and then I'll put it in.
So you put a lot of effort into getting all the details right about the...
Yes, and also I did history at university. I'm a real historian freak, and I love research.
Things aren't quite spot on then.
I'm not as annoyed as he gets about railways. You know, if you watch All Creatures Great and Small, and there's a train setting off from the station, and he'll go, well, that didn't belong there. That wasn't invented. You know, they didn't have that there. That's a so and so, and I don't get that upset, but I do like to try and make it as accurate for my...
Yeah. I suppose in books rather than films, the budget is the same, whether you have it right or you have it wrong.
Well, it's it's just little things, isn't it, that, you know, probably wouldn't cost any more, but make all the difference. It's like when you watch crime dramas and things like that, when he goes mad when they put the judge in the wrong clothes.
Oh, really?
You know, because they're not wearing the right robes, and you think, does anybody know? Does anybody care? But, you know, some people do, don't they?
Is that one of the reasons he's not read it? Is he a bit sick of
no, I think
daily life with crime? And
it's not his sort. He reads boring books.
No,
he reads books he thinks he ought to read. I think he's reading the history of China at the moment or something like that, you know.
So do you read a lot of cozy crime yourself, or do you try and do... I know a lot of... It can either go one way or the other, can't it? Authors will read everything to try and sort of be in the genre and know everything that's going on with it, or they'll completely ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist.
No, I do a bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Julia Chapman, who writes the Yorkshire Mysteries? I love her books. They're great. Leslie Cookman, she writes good ones. I like her. Kate Rhodes writes ones set on the Isles of Scilly. They're great. Well, they're not really... Sorry?
You know, every time I've read it.
Her new one came out yesterday, Kate Rhodes. Oh. No, Thursday. They're not really very cozy. They're a bit gritty, but, you know, there's different... I don't like really gritty books.
Right.
But, I don't like descriptions.
I like plenty of bodies, but I don't like them to go into too much detail.
Exactly.
Right.
You find a body.
There's 3 bodies in the first
Absolutely. Absolutely. As long as the one's not an animal.
Don't describe it too much.
Absolutely. So, yeah, but I read all sorts of things. But I do like reading cozy crime, but I try not to read it while I'm in the middle of writing, really.
Yeah. Cozy crime is so, like, appealing to me, especially because it's like, I keep trying to pick up crime books, and within chapter 1, it's like, oh, there's a dead child. It's like, oh, cheers, guys. And, you know, there's always that danger of it'll take a turn and it'll just go completely grim and horrific. And you just like, especially after you've had kids, you just like, no thanks, I don't know.
Cozy crime has rules. You're not allowed to hurt children.
Yeah.
Animals.
Oh, that's a big no-no.
Definitely not animals. You know, you can kill as many people as you like, but you're not allowed to kill the dog. You know, there are certain rules it has to abide by, and I like that.
Yeah. I love that there's, it seems to have become popular in the last 10 years or so, where you've got crime fiction that's very specifically about a place in Britain.
Yeah.
Specifically, which is great, because it used to be, you know, like James Bond films, like, let's see what Monaco's like.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, let's have a story set in Cornwall where we've been on holiday.
I think the settings become really important in certain books. They're like a character. It's like Vera in Northumberland and, you know, lots of these places that Shetland and the setting is like a vital part. When I first started writing this, I tried to set it in Birmingham, but it just didn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we've got an old railway line where I live. And I used to walk my dogs there every morning, and I was always like looking out to see if there'd be any bodies lying. But it didn't really have the same ring to it, really.
Yeah.
You know, the Hagley Road's not the same as a creek.
Was your first draft very different from the final published novel?
Yeah, massively.
How so? Was you
the beginning? I think the beginnings are really hard. And then, because often you're just learning, aren't you? I first started it on a Faber course. Have you read any of Joanna Cannon's books?
Yeah.
She does the 3 things about Elsie, the trouble with sheep and goats. She was on my course. And I think you're just starting out and your beginnings are all, when you look back at them, are awful.
Right.
So that changed completely.
Yeah.
And then you just learn. I think your first draft is just you putting it all down on paper, telling yourself the story, really. And then you go through it and think, nah, I don't need to do that. Don't need to do that. And your editor says that doesn't work there or whatever. And so I think it has, I mean, it hasn't changed overall, but it's a very different creature than it was to start off with.
I heard a podcast with this author, Gillian McAllister, who's local. And she says that her first drafts are completely like characterless and humorless, and it's literally just the crime and the clues, and then she'll go back afterwards and make them real people, which I find
different people write in different ways. I try to write as I go along. Sometimes I'll put XXXXX.
Yeah.
And know I have to go back to it.
Do that when you've got to put in a bit of research or something, and you're just like, I'm not doing that now.
But I try and do it as full as I can.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's where that's the difference, isn't it? So then I end up, rather than adding in, I'm taking out.
Yeah.
I guess that's the difference, isn't it?
Lee Child says he just writes one draft, sends it off, and then they print it, which I'm not sure I believe him.
I've never read a Lee Child book.
I have. I'm going to be samey.
That's the problem, isn't it? Well, his brother's writing them now for him.
Yeah.
Don't quite know how that works.
So how did you go from having finished your first draft to having a published book?
Wow.
That's
a long story. So after COVID, the publishing industry and things had changed a lot, and you no longer had to go through you didn't have to get an agent.
Oh, right.
And because I was getting over my cancer and I was thinking, well, I don't know, not how long I've got, but, I didn't want to hang around. It's such a long process getting a book published. So I know people who've signed with an agent 2 years ago and still haven't sold their book to a publisher.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So after COVID, you could go straight to certain independent publishers. They would accept submissions straight from the author.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll have a go at that this time.
Just to cut a couple of years off.
Yes. And cut a middleman out and all the rest of it. So I did that, and I had 3 offers, and I had the offers quite quickly, and I went with the one I thought was the best bet. And so that was about 2 years. It took about 18 months between getting that offer and getting the book published, probably longer than that. And I was, because I didn't have an agent. I mean, it is when it, we had a few creative differences, and I said I knew what I wanted for my cover, which was like a nice, bright picture in the style of an old-fashioned railway poster. And I explained all this, and they came back with something absolutely dreadful. I went, I don't like it. And then they came back with something else, not quite so dreadful. And I said, I still don't like it. And she said, well, I'm afraid if you read your contract, we have the final say. So when my book first came out, that was the cover.
Oh, right.
When I saw the cover, like the author said, "Oh, I cried." Well, I cried, but not not in a good way.
That's a completely different vibe.
And I went, "It's horrible. It's not what my book is about." So anyway, I was published, and 50 days after I was published, the publishers wrote to me and said they were ceasing to trade.
Oh no.
So I got my book out and it was in shops and blah, blah, blah. I had a lovely publication day, really happy. Everybody made a huge fuss of me. And then 3 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I had the email. So I was actually published. I think I managed one more day as a published author than Liz Truss did as Prime Minister. They're called Dark Edge Press. They're no longer in existence. So then, having cried, we have a 3-day rule in our family that you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself for 3 days, and then you have to pull yourself together. And I thought, I can't face going through it all again.
Was there a problem with, did you still technically own?
They reversed all my rights.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have any legal problems. Yeah. They reversed my rights.
Something at least.
Yeah. So I got my rights back. They said, you can't have the cover. I went, don't worry about it. I'll do without.
Yeah.
And then, because when you start mixing with other writers, you start meeting people that have independently published. And self-publishing is very different now from how it was when it was vanity publishing and they just took loads of money off you and ended up with a substandard book. So I'd met a few people who had published themselves and they said, why don't you give that a go? So I thought, well, I'll start off with my cover. And my husband actually was just Googling on a Saturday night and he said, oh, I found this chap and his covers look quite good. So I emailed him literally on 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, poured out my soul to him and said, I just need a cover. And he emailed me back straight away and said, I'm just going out, but leave it with me. I'll be back in touch with you tomorrow. And he was.
Yeah.
And he came up with that.
Brilliant.
Which is just what I wanted. And then because my book had been edited and proofread by a one-eyed womble, I discovered, because it was just full of errors. We did all that again, and then somebody put me in touch with a typesetter, who's the person that puts it for your Word document into a book. Publishable and because I wanted it printed on eco-friendly paper, like forestry paper. Yeah. So everything's recycled. It's all done on FSC paper. Brilliant. All the packaging's recycled. And I had got control then to do what I wanted, because I said I want it print. Oh, you can't. We'll just print it on what we always print on. Right. I want this, I want that. No, you can't do that. We do that. You haven't got that say. So all of a sudden I was able to do what I wanted to do and hopefully practice what I preached a little bit. Yeah. And make it as eco-friendly as possible. And
make it look exactly how you want it. It looks like a different book from the other
absolutely book. And I think it's better. Definitely. And people have said, you can't tell the difference between that and a regularly.
The other one doesn't look very cozy.
So I had a run of books printed and it's on Amazon and everything, and it's just you get the contacts and then you can, I was thinking I just can't do it, but you can.
So did you go through Amazon to publish it, or did you sort of go through a different publisher?
No, I went through it's printed. It's available on Amazon for Kindle and they'll do their printing. Yeah. It's available in bookshops in that format because I've got the links with all the bookshops through a wholesaler. Yeah. And also a lot of bookshops I supply them directly. Yeah. Brilliant. But I had actually printed some copies.
Did you find it tricky to get into that sort of side of things?
No, because somebody gave me the name of this woman who runs something called the Book Refinery. Yeah. Was it the Writers Refinery? I can't remember. And she helped me do it all.
Oh, brilliant.
It was so straightforward. Yeah. And so quick.
How have you found self-publishing in terms of marketing and getting the book out there. I've heard that's the tricky
hard work. But then people will tell you that if you're an unknown person, when people are published by Random House or whatever, they'll have Richard Osman, who is published, I don't know who he's published by, so whoever his publisher is, they put all their marketing budget into Richard Osman.
Oh, okay. So you still got to do it
So
yourself
you still you still have to do your own stuff anyway if you want it, but on their terms.
Yeah.
And it works for some people. I quite like the business side of it because having been a really creative person, I became a tax accountant because that was a good job. And so I can do the business side of it.
Right, so that bit doesn't faze you at all.
No, not really.
Now you've got control of everything.
And I've got control of everything. So I am the control freak that my midwife told me I was all those years ago.
So would you recommend self-publishing as a route for new authors or people?
It depends. I think it depends on what you want. I'm quite realistic. I'm in my late 50s now. I'm not going to, be a #1 bestseller. Very unlikely.
A lot of authors started late.
But you don't know. But what I'm saying is that I'm not, it's just something I enjoy doing and I want to do it. It's not, I think if you want to build your career on it, you might need the backing of a publisher.
Right. Yeah.
But then look at LJ Ross.
She's done phenomenally well.
And she and her husband do all hers.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you see that she's so Amazon released a report which was the top selling authors on their website from all time on their website since it started. Number 1 was Lee Child.
Yeah.
Number 2 was LJ Ross.
Yeah.
Like she's outsold Stephen King, J.K. Rowling.
And she and her husband, because she's the L and her husband is the J. He's James really? And she's Louise. I don't know her. This is what because I follow all these people and find out what their secrets are. Because she looked for a publishing contract.
Yeah.
And I think because she was a barrister. She didn't do crime, but she just took some time off. And her husband's, and she looked at all these publishing contracts, and her husband said, "You're much better off doing it on Kindle."
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And he's given up work now, and he works solely with her.
Oh, right.
And they're incredibly successful, and she's turned down loads of offers.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, and I like her books. I really admire what she's done. Yeah.
So I mean, people would probably say that's, don't immediately assume you're going to be the next LJ Ross.
No.
But it can be done.
Well, yeah, some people do. Mel Sharratt. She's very successful as well. Angela Marsons is crime. She's self-published. She's very successful.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts. There's one called Six Figure Authors, which is people who just make a living self-publishing through Kindle. And I looked into it a lot myself, and I'd always assumed, as a lot of people do, that you need to write erotic fiction to make a lot of money on Amazon. But these guys just write plain sci-fi and romance and that sort of thing. So it can be. But
your average author, there was an interesting article recently published by the Alliance of Independent Authors, and they did a research program thing on how much your average author earns.
Oh, right.
And I think your average author, whether published or self-published, traditionally earns £5,000 a year.
£5,000 a year.
Your average author.
Yeah.
And self-published authors actually earn more because by the time everybody's had their cuts,
right, you get a higher percentage of the royalty.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Was there a big? You don't have to go into figures or anything. But was there a big upfront cost to self-publishing?
Not a huge one because I'd already had an editor, so I was okay.
Yeah.
So my biggest costs were getting it typeset, and then also converted for Kindle.
Right.
And then, but that was only a few £100, really.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then, like, my biggest outlay, I suppose, was actually getting them printed. But you don't have to do that. You can get them printed on Amazon, and then you can buy author copies from Amazon at a relatively low rate, I think. So you don't have to do that. Yeah. And I know people who do it all themselves. But I do think you need an editor. But editors aren't hugely expensive.
Do you have beta readers or anything like that? Or?
I don't know. Well, I might do for my next one, because now I know people I trust.
Yeah. So you'll...
because you've got to have somebody who'll look at it as a writer rather than a reader, really, because you might, and you want people to say what's good and what's not good, or what you could change.
Yeah.
Whereas if you give it to your friend, they'll go, oh, it's lovely.
Yeah.
And that's not really very helpful, is it? You need to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Alison Jean Lester, the author who came in for our first talk, was saying she was telling me off very gently in a very nice way. Because my wife is the only person who reads my writing. She's like, that's not enough. You need strangers who will tear you down if it's not, correct. We've got a writing group here if anybody's interested.
Have you? That's good. I did a lot of stuff online.
Oh, on forums and that sort of thing.
And I joined and I did some courses online, and I found that distance really quite reassuring, because you weren't looking at somebody while they were reading your book and saying it wasn't.
We have that problem in the writing group, is we're a bit too polite sometimes.
Exactly. And everybody's very nice. You don't learn from people being, you don't have to be rude.
Yeah.
There is a nice middle ground.
Definitely.
But I found doing it online was easier, because it gave you that distance. So it wasn't...
You don't have to watch their heartbreak.
No, and you do learn. And editors, my editor, I don't know whether she's retired. I haven't heard from her lately. She was a really, really strict. I never met her, but I had visions. She was Glaswegian, and I didn't actually spoke to her either. I think it was all online. But I had visions of it. She was absolutely not viciously cruel, but vicious.
Right.
But she was right.
Yeah.
You get it, and I think, oh, I'm really offended. And then I'd think about it for a day, and I'd think, she's right.
That seems to be a lot of thing that puts a lot of people off, is the idea that it needs to be perfect the first time it comes out. And a lot of people don't see the sort of teamwork that goes in after the fact, because obviously you create the whole thing yourself, but then it needs a bit of steering, it needs a bit of chipping away here and there.
And editors are professional people. They know what they're doing. It's not the same. One of my friends asked me to read her book before it was her second book, and I went, I'll read it, but I'm not going to advise you, because that's not my skill.
Right. It's a different skill set.
Yeah, and I haven't got them. You can learn how to edit, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I can read it and tell you whether I like it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to read it and then give you like massive report on it.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing about self-publishing. You've got to be a lot more self-reliant, and you've got to
and you have to have
skills yourself.
And you have to have an editor.
Yeah,
and
I've seen that a lot, where people are just like, please don't do it without an editor, because you'll end up with a million typos, and
it'll end up like 30,000 words longer than it needs to be.
Yeah, I have that trouble. Like my first draft of, I've only written one, but my first draft was like 140,000 words. I've got it down to 80.
And then what you learn, because my first, I can't remember what it was, but just the printing of the books is so more. If you write out, that's about 190, probably 95,000 words. But if you go over a certain amount of pages, it just costs a fortune to either print on Amazon or anything. And obviously that.
Is that why they only let their big name authors like Stephen King or Brandon Sanderson print the big epics?
Robert Galbraith, whose books I love, but just get longer and longer and longer.
Yeah, every book is like, steady on, JK, I've got things to do.
Your hands. But I do. Do you watch them on the TV?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watch them. I read them as well, because then I understand it, and then I watch it on the TV. No, it's a bit.
I have to audiobook it while
I'm not very good at listening to audiobooks. No. My mind wanders, or I think, oh, that's a good idea. And
do you have an audiobook of this?
No, I don't. Because
would you be interested in getting one?
I would, yeah, because I do think, because that obviously reaches a lot of people.
Spotify are doing a massive push on audiobooks at the moment. It's their next big thing. So a lot of authors are saying that if you want to get into audiobooks, now's a good time, because Spotify are going to corner the market, as they usually do in these kinds of
But
things.
Then it's finding somebody, like a voice actor that you like. And I know people who've...
I record audiobooks.
Do you? Is that your job? We've got. Carry on speaking.
I've just written a book called The Home Studio Audiobook Handbook, which at the moment is being typeset in Australia before Ingram Spark printed, distributed globally.
Right. Wow. I've not used Ingram Spark, but
they are not nice people to deal with.
I have heard that.
Which is why I've got a nice, friendly, capable man in Australia to do it all for me, because he knows how to deal with that.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of things about Ingram Spark, and I just haven't gone near them. I think they do the printing and the stuff, don't they? And
what they have got is a brilliant website. And if you print out every page of it like I have, you end up with a huge lever arch file, which is like an encyclopedia. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
You try and talk to them, they're awful. Absolutely awful. Ignorant, arrogant, unhelpful.
Well, they probably just got people. Oh, well, I don't know. I really don't know.
I've used Amazon's KDP in the past, and they're so cheap. It's amazing. I was doing rewrites, and it was cheaper to print out like an author copy and not publish it on the website than it would have been to print it downstairs.
Really?
Yeah.
What paper do they use?
I don't know. It's probably not very eco-friendly, to be fair. So how is your writing process? Do you write every day? Or?
I try to, but life just gets in the way. I've got a 91-year-old mother who's really poorly at the moment. She's been in hospital for the last 3 weeks. So, and it's like, oh, Jane will do that. Jane will do that. Because not everybody will treat it as a proper job.
Yeah.
Erin Green, who was here, she says, well, you just have to say to people, don't interrupt me. And I go, but people just interrupt me, But I try to write. I'm a morning person, so I get up early and I walk my dogs for an hour, and then I come back and I try and write. I've actually got relapsing and remitting multiple sclerosis as well. I was diagnosed when I was 27.
Right.
And so I tend to now, as I've got older, I tend to sleep for 2 hours in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And then
you just have to make allowances.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of self-publishing again. Although deadlines are very good, get you moving, don't they? Because it focuses your mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to let things go, and I think I'd be up against it with deadlines.
If they were like, book 2 in 2 months, please.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Yeah.
And I'd find that really stressful. And
yeah.
So I do try and write every day or part of the day.
But you're not like punishing yourself if you don't.
Well, no, because other things come first, don't they? I mean, my children were at home until recently, and
and if you do it because you love it, there's no point making yourself hate it.
Yeah, no, I don't want it to be, like a not. Some writers treat it as a 9 till 5 job, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. But I do it as and when, and you can.
Are you a big planner, or
I am a big planner.
Yeah, do you have like structures and notebooks and everything?
That's the thing with crime, though, because you have to have certain things happening at certain times.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is it fantasy or horror that you write?
Mostly horror.
Yeah, I've never read a horror book.
Oh, I think
I read one of Stephen King's. I think I read Carrie.
Yeah.
But you have to have certain things happening at certain times.
Right, because you've got the timeline of events.
Yeah, so you start off, then you have something happen, then people are reacting to it, and then something big has to happen in the middle.
Yeah.
And then something big has to happen 2/3 of the way through. And it's just to keep the pace going. And, if you examine any book you read, they all do it.
Do you formalise that a lot?
I write it down, and then you just like fill in the bits.
Yeah.
I know what's going to happen when it's going to happen. How characters get from that to that sometimes is up to them.
Right.
I used to think people were really weird when they said that. But I remember I was in Plymouth and I was writing away, and I knew how I wanted this chapter to go. But these characters kind of just did something else altogether. Yeah. And it sounds really weird, but it's true. So I think sometimes you have to just have basic outline and then be prepared to...
Right, just let it steer itself a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. I've used have you seen Save the Cat? These things,
Yeah.
Where it's, do you go that far with this happens on this page, this happens on this page, because it's that, if you're not familiar, it's a screenwriting thing. Hollywood use it a lot, where it's you know, on page 1 of your script this needs to happen, on page 5 this needs to happen. It's called Save the Cat because your hero has to do something nice in the first 5 minutes so that the audience gets on side with them.
Yeah.
So Save a Cat, something like that.
There's a novel writing version.
Yeah.
It's not quite so rigid when you're actually writing.
No, it's a little... Yeah, I think the novel one is not quite as maniacal about it either, because the screenwriting stuff can literally be on page 90, this happens.
Oh, I don't like that. I like the structure because you know where you're going, because otherwise you'd just write streams of consciousness, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, I like the structure to know where I'm going, but I like the flexibility. And I don't write, you know how people do these character biographies so they know what,
I've done that
how many spoons of cornflakes they have. I don't do that.
Yeah. It took me ages to get a first draft of my book done because I faffed around with stuff like that.
It's procrastination. It's just something else putting off to actually writing.
None of it goes into it.
Does it matter if she has cornflakes for breakfast or muesli? Does it matter? As long as you remember things like, and I do have a card system, which I'm not very good at updating. As long as you remember what colour people's eyes are, what colour hair they've got. I think that's what matters really. I'm not one for biographies. Some of these things that these American like book helping things, you know, that they have pages and pages of like, what star sign are they? Yeah,
they get you to write exercises where you put your character in a different situation, and it's like,
you just
just spent 2 hours on that. I could have put 2 hours into the book.
Exactly.
If you do that, you're tying yourself down. You might get to a point when it's really important that she actually likes a bacon sandwich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely, and that might be very, you know, displaying something inside that we didn't know about, but you know, it's I don't do that, but I do like a vague outline. I'm not one of these people that just sits down and writes.
Right. Yeah. How did you make the jump? Is this the first novel you've written?
The first.
Or have you written other ones that you haven't?
I've got other ones that haven't really got an end.
Right.
But they were just practicing. I always treat those as my practice efforts.
How did you know this was the one that you needed to?
Because I put real effort into learning the craft and learning how, you know, things like how to do flashbacks, how to do this, how to do that, and I knew where I wanted it to go, and I felt like I'd got a bunch of characters, and it's actually it's going to be a series.
Brilliant.
So it'll have similar the main basic characters, but then have lots of different people coming in with each one. Yeah. Because there's a lot of places I can go still with my characters.
Are they all going to be in the same village?
They're going to move. No, it's not all going to happen in the same village now, because that's a bit. I don't want to be formulaic. I don't want to be repetitive. I want to be able to bring something new to every book. So the next book is set further up the coast. I've got my cover. Just got it. I really love it. Pinky purple. So it's set. This is a Georgian house that's actually near Falmouth, but it's not on the coast at all. And I've moved it there. And it was actually in my book. It's a packet ship captain's house. So Falmouth was very famous for the packet ships. So I've done tons of research, which won't come into the book, but I just love things like that. And so he built this house, and it's been inherited. It's gone down the generations. And Olivia, who is the heroine of my book, the eco-architect, has just converted it into an eco-boutique hotel. Oh, okay. So it's had a retrofit, and it's all eco-friendly. And on the day after the opening party, they find a body.
Brilliant. And she's investigating.
And well, she doesn't ever like investigating, but she gets dragged in.
Brilliant. How far in advance have you planned the series? You doing it book by book, or?
I've got about 4, 5.
Yeah.
planned, and I'll just see how it goes. But if I get to the point I think I'm just rehashing, I'll do something else.
Brilliant.
But at the moment, there's lots. Because she's an eco-architect, she's going to be going to all these lovely old buildings, and all sorts of things can happen. Because these, in cosy crime, the sleuth has always got to have a reason to be doing. I mean, if she was just working in the local shop, it wouldn't be the same, would it? But she's going out and about and meeting people.
Kevin from Grand Design's going around solving mysteries.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I noticed you're a member of the Romantic Novelists Association.
I am.
As are all three authors in our series. What made you sign up for that? And talk about what it is for people who haven't heard of it.
I'm also in the Crime Writers Association.
Oh, you really?
Brilliant. Because you can do, but it's just the Romantic Novelists Association and the Crime Writers Association are just basically groups of people who have been published, or have got books out, and it's. What I like about them is that they arrange meetings. So you meet other people and you talk about things. They also do educational things. They'll do workshops. They have conferences.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the crime writing conference because they all got COVID.
Oh, no.
And I didn't go to the romantic one because it was in London. I struggle with conferences because they're full on, like 9 till 6 every day. And I can't do it because I'd miss the afternoon.
Yeah.
I could do that for one day, but they're 3 days. And it would take me like 3 weeks to get over it.
Yeah.
So I don't go. So they're supposed to be doing more hybrid things. But they meet up. It's just like, they have forums. You've got any issues, any problems, you put it on the forum and somebody will come and help. They have Zoom meetings. So they're just basically like a support group. And
that sounds great. Because quite often
exchanging information, helping.
Quite often writers are sort of the only person they know who are writing, aren't they? So.
Yeah. And it's just nice to meet other people who get you when you say strange things. They sort of say, oh, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
It's like Erin that was here, I know her through the RNA.
Right.
And we go to meetings in Leicester together normally.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Everyone who's been in through all the author talks has, I think most of them, if not all of them, have said lockdown was a massive boost for them in terms of, not so much a boost, but because obviously it was dreadful, but it was a moment where they could reflect on what they wanted to do with their lives. And so many of the authors who have been in here have been like, that's when I decided, bugger it, I'm going to publish a book because I've always wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, lockdown sort of like coincided with my cancer diagnosis, so that gave me extra time. And so when I was stuck at home, I could escape to Cornwall in my mind. They say that reading gives you the opportunity to travel when you have to stay at home.
Yeah.
And that's, I thought I'd just go and disappear and pretend I'm in
maps
Cornwall.
And everything. I love maps. They're brilliant.
My daughter did the map.
It's great.
She's an artist, although that's not very... It's going to flop over now. But, that's just the map of the village. So that shows you where she lives. And this is the railway station. And this is the run that she does every morning and whatever. So I like maps in books.
Me too. I think you've got to...
Some people like to imagine things for themselves, don't they? And that's fine. But it's like when you see things televised,
and they've
sometimes
cast someone and you're like,
spoil.
that's not what he looks like.
I know.
Have you thought about who you would cast?
No, I haven't, because I'm thinking, because I'd hate it if it was somebody I didn't like.
Right, yeah.
And you sign away your rights.
Yeah. And you do, people say, like, I think Stephen King says, well, if the movie comes out and it sucks, the book still exists. But it does kind of, you do retrofit the book when you read it back. Like, I struggle reading Bond novels because I can't stick to one Bond in my head. I have to try really hard to pick which Bond the book is going to be about. Like, right, Pierce Brosnan. And then you're reading it and you drift off.
I mean, as I said, I've not read any Lee Child, but Jack Reacher, and then people who've seen
that's
Tom
the
Cruise.
Prime example of it, isn't it? Little 5'6".
And Reacher's huge, isn't he? Sorry?
new one, and the Jack Reacher series is.
And
he's
who is
a
it in
beast,
that?
isn't he?
Alan somebody, I think. He's really
He's
tall.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I mean, why they had Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that he's a name. But
Jack Reacher there.
The new fella's like 6'5", isn't he? So.
Yeah, this one is.
But then you get people that say, well, you're getting paid for it, so you just count your pennies and...
Yeah.
I'm still at the precious stage.
I remember an interview with Michael Caine where he was asked about Jaws: The Revenge, Jaws 3, one of them. He did a terrible Jaws film, and the interviewer was like, "Have you actually watched this film?" And he's like, "I haven't seen the film, but I have seen the house that I bought with the money from the film, and it's lovely."
Yeah, get to that stage, don't you? I'm not there yet.
Does anybody have any questions for Jane at all?
About the illustrator, the artist, do you have to finish the book before they can produce a cover?
No. And
I find that rather odd.
And do you know what I found very odd? Because I was very naive. And I suppose when I thought, I always just assumed they'd read the book.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
They don't.
No.
They don't. No, but they haven't got time, have they, if you think about it? So I said I want something that's really bright and cosy and has got green in it and a creek in it and whatever. And they work, well, that's how I do it. I don't know how traditionally I didn't have any say in that one at all. I think the publishers do it. I don't know whether traditionally published authors...
Erin was saying last time that she got her cover back and they'd put the wrong colour clothes on them. They'd put the wrong flowers in the front of the image and everything. And she's like,
Charlotte's very happy with her first cover. She's on a hardback book. My niece
Yeah.
got a contract with Fiverr.
Oh,
She
right.
wasn't very happy about the cover on her hardback.
But did she have any say?
Not really.
She had some, and her agent had some, but they got to the point where they said, we just
Well, that's it. They'll say, we refer you to clause so-and-so, subsection so-and-so that you've signed. Okay. Well, that's it.
didn't she say they changed the title as well and that sort of thing?
The title of the first book she
It's on tour with the TV people now as well.
Well, see, this is...
Really?
yeah.
They want to completely change all the characters
What?
here enough.
This is... Yeah.
I'll tell you, that cover is brilliant.
Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Because I was so happy after that.
I know the difference between them.
I mean, the first one... I haven't even got a copy of the first one they sent me. And it looked like something from transporting people to... I said I want railway tracks. It looked like one of those things that was going to a concentration
like a
camp.
book, yeah. My goodness, that's not cosy.
That's not...
Crikey.
I wouldn't pick up a book with that cover.
Yeah.
You know, and it just... And I suppose that I've got this real vision in my head. And my man, Ken, got it.
This has been artificially extended, by the way.
It's very nice.
Ignore this side of...
No, I quite like it. That's even more creek-like than the cover.
They used
That's very clever.
Little AI thing. So I took the cover and said, extend it, and it extended it.
Wow, I like that.
Put the little bit on the side.
I really like
I
that.
say you should never judge a book by the cover, but people
You
do.
do. You do.
You can't help it. I mean, that book's great. Oh, yeah, I think I might like to read that. But I drew them off from that one.
Absolutely. And it, and you know, I think you do judge a book by the cover, and
I think it's a good
it makes you pick it up anyway, and then look.
Yeah, I think if you're going to self-publish, the most important thing is to get a good designer.
Yeah.
And I'm in the R&D. And first conference I went to, it was a newbies thing. I saw this young woman, and she looked a bit lost, and I knew lots of people, and she obviously didn't. So I went over and chatted to her, and she was absolutely lovely. And it was Lisa Ferd. And so I looked at her work, and it was beautiful. She'd never done historicals before, but I said, you know, could you do me a cover? And she has a sheet, and you have to tell her important points.
Really? I've never heard of her. Is she a cover designer then, or does she write as well now?
Oh, she writes for about 4 different publishers.
Oh, right.
Brilliant.
And what does she write?
You might know her as Mary Jane Baker.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, but her real name's Lisa Ferd. She writes as that. She writes as Mary Jane Baker. She's written a war series for somebody else. I think she said she was doing it before. my last cover, it took a bit of a while because she was a little bit busy.
Yeah.
But I think she's just got a gift.
Mm.
Because she produced these covers, and I'm sure it's what sold my books.
Yeah. I mean, I love historical fiction, and it's the one thing that is a real no-go area for me, because I was introduced, because I went to the library from when I was very little, worked my way through the children's section when Enid Blyton was banned and had to go everybody else, and then finally got to the adult section and discovered Jean Plaidy.
Oh, yes.
And that is why I did history at university, because I loved Jean Plaidy so much. I mean, not the best reason, but I loved it. I mean, I probably had more knowledge about the Tudors than actually was correct, but I still enjoyed it.
But you don't fancy having a go?
I wouldn't have a go, because that is my go-to read. That is what I read for real pleasure and fun, is historical fiction. Having said that, I'm not a huge Hilary Mantel fan, really.
Oh, right. I've not read those myself. They're a bit too big.
Shouldn't really say that.
The first book was very gripping.
Yeah.
But she got a bit bogged down in the research after that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I enjoyed the series, although I couldn't really see it or hear it. Or did you watch it on TV?
No, strange enough, I didn't.
It's very dark. They filmed it authentically with tallow candlelight.
Oh, no.
So basically,
really?
you couldn't see a thing.
I read.
I kept adjusting the TV and turning the brightness up. And
I read the other series with. Is it Thomas Cromwell?
Yes.
With him in it as like the police chief fella, called Dissolution.
Oh, Sanson.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're fantastic.
See, I specialised in the Tudors at university, so that's my real.
He is another one of those authors, though. He
went to Birmingham University. I don't know him.
But his books just go boop, boop, boop.
Yeah, but they are good.
Slow down.
They are good. I do like him. They were talking about televising them, weren't they, at one stage? But I don't know who they'd use.
Yeah.
I think Vicky Foster,
TV companies don't seem to want to make anything that costs money these days.
how did J.K. Rowling keep control of her book? Because I've heard that she was very particular about the actors and how it was.
Oh, right.
Filmed.
I think because she's J.K. Rowling.
I know, but nobody knew that with the first one, did they?
With the book, yeah. Well, those first 3 books, though, I mean, she didn't really. Was she that famous with the first 3? Really?
I'm not sure. I know she.
I think she wasn't, because I didn't read those first 3 until they were all out in paperback. I hadn't really, and I was on holiday, and my sister-in-law had taken them, and I sat and read them.
I heard she got rumbled pretty quickly in terms of the Galbraith thing.
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting the Galbraith thing, but well, because she wasn't. It wasn't. They weren't selling that well, were they? So they put that. But I don't know how she. I think because she's just who she is. And they didn't start making the films till, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a while after.
I don't know how many books had come out. I've seen all of those, but the last one.
They're interesting because I just read the most recent one. No, I think a new one has just come out.
Got the Galbraith ones, that new one's just come out.
I recently read The Ink Black Heart,
Yeah.
which was about a cartoon creator's fandom turning on them, and it gets all political and everything. It's fun to read J.K. Rowling clearly working through her sort of personal life through a detective novel. Do you do that at all? Do you try and work through anything? Not that you're being turned on by,
If someone's really annoyed me, I'll put something in it and kill them, and then I'll take it out again.
Why not?
So no, I think it does perhaps alter what you do, but whether you keep it in or not, or whether you just use it as a method of exorcism.
Stephen King seems to do it a lot.
Really,
Half of his books, the main character is a middle-aged male writer.
Oh, really?
Like, come on, Steve.
Use your imagination. Does
anybody else have any questions at all? I think we're close to the hour. We've crept over a little bit.
That was because I was late, and I do apologise again, but the traffic was terrible.
It's okay, don't worry.
And I couldn't find the library. What kind of history do you write?
Oh, Regency romance,
Right.
but there's sort of more romantic suspense.
Oh. Do you know? Oh God, I forgot. Janice.
Oh, Janice Preston, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gave me a lot of advice on this stuff.
Yeah.
So I did apply to Mills and Boon that she was writing.
I've got rubbish there.
I've never. I mean, yeah, it's very formulaic, isn't it, Mills and Boon?
Yeah, I decided in the end I was never going to fit it because I got loads of feedback. People said, "Oh gosh, yes, you're nearly there," but what she wanted me to do, and I'm thinking.
I've heard it's quite hard because it's very formulaic,
Right.
and you practically have to do so and so and so on certain pages. I don't know. I've never read a Mills and Boon.
I have, but they've gone off, I reckon.
Yeah, there's still got a few good ones, but most of the new ones, it's very insular.
I
don't like you to have, I don't like you to have extra characters and things.
Right.
Like that.
Oh, right.
And also, you're limited to 75,000, whereas I like to put a bit of suspense, a minor anything. I think the shortest was 86 and the longest was
They're like 75 because they don't cost a lot to print.
96. Yeah.
Oh,
So I've discovered.
There's another Jean Cody name, Victoria Holt.
Victoria Holt, she wrote under.
I love them.
Oh, I did, yeah. Yeah, and
Philippa Carr.
yeah,
Yeah, Georgia.
MMK, she was good.
Yeah.
She did some suspense. She did the Death in Andamans and Death in Cyprus and Death in Berlin. They were all sort of set just post World War II, is it? That's when they were written.
Yeah.
So,
Are you ever tempted to have a go at a different genre yourself? Maybe not.
I could a thriller. I would write a thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got like, I
Saxon's
think about,
coming
I'm sort of in my mind, I'm knocking a thriller around.
Yeah.
But as I say, history is my like go-to comfort, and
Right.
I wouldn't even, and I think that's it's not a skill set I've got, but I do like crime because my husband's a criminal barrister. So, which is why I wrote Cozy Crime, because he was coming home every day and telling me all these horrible stories because he was doing murders, rapes, child abuse and everything. I quite enjoyed the barrister side of it, but I didn't enjoy the gore. So I knew I wanted to write something much more uplifting.
Yeah.
But I like the structure of courts and things as well. But I don't think I'd write a courtroom drama. I don't think so.
You've got an in there if you wanted to, though.
No, I don't think so.
Diane Saxon's coming in a couple of weeks, and she started in romance and then branched into.
I met Diane Saxon for the first and only time so far at a crime writers meeting we had in Birmingham City Centre. She's lovely, really good.
She's nice. I did have a watch it with her first book though, because I had to go to the end just to make sure the dog was all right.
Do you know what? I've done that before. I read the last page of a book before I start it.
No, I don't like
There's a really good website. I think it's just for films and TV shows, where it's called doesthedogdie.com. And you can go in, and it's got loads of other things as well, where you can like tick a box, like is there a divorce in it? Is there a...
Well, I've got 2 dogs in mine, and when I was starting to write this book on this Faber course with Joanna Cannon, she just emailed me and she said, just promise me, Jane, you won't kill them. She's a real dog lover. I said no. And I was at a thing in Falmouth. I'm at the Falmouth Fringe Festival next weekend.
Brilliant.
And last year I met this author, and she was doing this talk about this brilliant book she's written. Her name's S.L. Rosewarne, she writes under, and it was all about, and it's written from the point of view of a dog, and it's brilliant. And I just sat there and I went, does it die? She looked at me and she went, no. I went, all right, then I'll read it.
Another one, because she killed a cat off in her first book.
Who, Ellie Griffiths? Yes.
Ages to get to read the second one, and then I love them all.
Yes, it was one of her. She had 2 kittens, didn't she? No, I think that's no.
What is,
Humans,
animals,
yeah.
no.
Maybe we should
No.
work on some stickers for the library that have a little sticker that says the dog dies in this one. Don't read it.
Oh, you'll have all the. No,
I
no.
remember reading the kiddies one to my sister once, and it was about this puppy, and I thought I skipped to the back, and I was like, oh god, this dog dies in it.
No.
I've never watched people do that. It's going to cost them sales, isn't it?
Yeah.
She nearly did put me off.
Well, that's the moral code of cozies. You don't kill animals
Right. Yeah.
or
Good.
children or do anything nasty like that.
Can I ask, how did you research what it's like to be an eco-architect?
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah.
I just on the internet. I know an awful lot about, and I have got a friend's husband is an architect, but he's not eco. But the internet is amazing what you can learn. I mean, I know people who've written books set in Iceland and they've never been, or they've been once, and you think, how'd you do that? But
I tried to write my one about New York, and I've never been to New York.
Haven't you?
So I was obsessively watching there are sad acts. I'm sadder because I watched it, but there are sad acts who will film their commute to work.
Oh.
So they'll stick a GoPro on the front of their scooter, and then for 20 minutes you can just watch the city go by as they drive to work, and it's
you don't get smells
cool.
though, then, do you?
No, you don't. Yeah,
it's probably just as well, actually.
Right, I think we might have to wrap up. I'm afraid I've got to go downstairs and cover some lunches.
Oh, have you? Right, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
And yeah, we've got books for sale.
Yes, I've got book. They're $9.99 because it's all me FSC paper and everything. But
Brilliant.
You can help yourself to bookmarks, maps, or anything else. Or not.
Thank you very
much. Not very
much.
good at the selling side of it, I'm afraid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go and check the camera.
Can't resist a book. I'm about like that,
thank you
I'm
very
afraid. I did have some pennies.